Good evening, everybody. It is very weird for me to be starting at the time I would normally be finishing. No guarantees as to whether or not I will do the full duration for the stream. It took me a lot longer to get started than I'd wanted, obviously, but I want to be mindful of the fact I do have a day job that I want to perform well at, while also trying to acknowledge the fact that I do have Wednesday off this week, streaming wise, just because of the local game dev meetup. So we will try and we'll try and do a good run of Quest for Glory. It did occur to me I keep notes on my tablet, which is not in front of me right now, so I may need to take a quick second to grab that, but I will enable the display capture and then hit play. For some reason, it doesn't like me opening up the game windowed mode, or I'm sorry, doesn't let me select the window for the game. So we're doing our best. I should mention I was very pleasantly surprised to see there's something I really enjoyed playing for far too short of a time that went on sale today. So I picked up something which I'll probably play on stream before too long. I was thinking of doing it tonight actually, but I did want to get some more Quest for Glory. Excuse me. I'm going to take a quick minute and get my tablet. And then we will be good to start. Okay. I think we're ready. I'm gonna have to delete a bunch. Actually, you know what? Maybe we'll. No. We can delete it later. So I haven't been taking too many notes as far as actions that I want to take. Oh, hang on. Breaking news. Bet I know what that is. There's some by-elections going on in Canada for those of you who... All right. So I got a few notes as to the special potion. The one thing that I've been doing a poor job of is making notes as to, hey, we've got a few people here. So we've got Tremendous. I'm going to bed right now, but thought I'd pop in and say hi. Thank you. I do apologize for such a late start. I wasn't planning on that, but I hope you have a great sleep, and I will be streaming Friday next. I really do appreciate you stopping in, though. And Vanguard, how are you doing? Are you going to be making a game like this? I hear these games are super popular. Also, I forgot to happy Majority Day. I'm sure you must be thrilled. So I'm just thinking of the different threads to pull on. Obviously, I've got creating the potion here. And I've actually got a fair amount. Oh, yeah. Okay, actually, no, I had a couple ideas on this. So flying water was the waterfall, which I think makes sense. Flowers from Irana's piece. Got your hands full getting your current game finished? Yeah. It's funny, like, I will confess, I'm actually enjoying Quest for Glory a lot more than I thought I would, because I do fully recognize my sort of my, I don't know if I want to call it a bias against sort of classic games, but I am more impatient with old school gaming conventions than I think a lot of people who, well, okay, obviously a lot of people who stream these games, because that's a selection issue. But my view, I like to think I'm being fair. My view of this is that I carry the benefit of, lots of game development, right? People learning how to make games, doing better interfaces, understanding what is intuitive for a player. And to go back to experiences that were maybe figuring this out, sometimes even for the very first time, I personally don't think that is a black mark on the game, right, or the developer or anything like that. But to me, I don't find it helpful to say, I don't find it helpful to say, oh, okay, the game is good actually because they were working that out. Another example I might give is that, like, I do have a particular fondness for old books. So, like, quite literally beside me, not exactly in arm's length, but like I do particularly like the classics. There is one shelf entirely dedicated to the pre-Socratics. The next shelf, has half of it is sort of related to Hellenistic philosophy, basically. I mean, there's like, I guess Plato's on the pre-Socratic shelf as well, but like the half on the second one is like the first, hey Marston, sorry, Mysteron Hysteron. Apologies for stumbling over it. I'm going to be jumping onto into the game a little bit, but I'm trying to explain why I enjoy this game quite a bit more than I was expecting. How I normally bounce off old games while also sort of acknowledging that some of the basically I can see how people will think I'm being unfair, whereas actually I think I'm giving these things a fair shake. But anyway, so like, again, this is just how I'm wired, right? I happen to really like old books. I like reading this stuff. And a lot of these will say, at least in the Western tradition, or sometimes the first time we have somebody that we at least have a written record of wrestling with these kinds of questions. And sometimes they come up with amazingly daft answers. Your perspective is interesting. I played these games when they came out. You remember definitely liking the Quest for Glories, but there are objective anti-patterns like soft locking that are super annoying. Oh, I didn't realize you could soft lock yourself in this. This is interesting. It's actually one reason why I've been pretty liberal with the pod. That's good to know. Thank you. But yeah, so, the thing here is that I don't want to like turn around and so like if Aristotle turns around and says, why do objects why did I okay, good to know. It's like, why do objects fall to the ground? And like, this is probably going to be unfair to Aristotle, but it's like, it is in the nature of objects for them to fall to the ground. It's like, this explains nothing, right? But I don't know, what would my answer have been without the benefit of, of gravity and all of that. So, we benefit from these old works, but I think if we don't acknowledge the shortcoming, then we wind up saying some potentially very silly things. Excuse me. Like, it's not a fault that, Aristotle did not have a completely modern conception of the world, and it's still worth reading, particularly because it helps us have an understanding of some of the intellectual traditions, up to and including some of the false paths that we went down, to understand certain ideas. So likewise, in terms of classic games, I recognize fully that my perspective is going to be shaped from modern gaming, and that I'm reaching back and looking at things where people sort of learned those lessons, sometimes painfully. I mean, I'm sure there are no shortage of games which really have their origins as, I really liked playing such and such, but man, I hated it when ... And then, of course, filling in the ... is how you sometimes wind up with wonderful things. I'll actually give you a great example of this. Crypt of the Necrodancer was very much, Ryan Clark acknowledged that he liked roguelikes, but he thought that it was a little weird and potentially even allowed the player to act against their own interest, in the sense that the game would wait until you made a move, effectively turning it into a turn-based game. And he experimented with different ideas in terms of how to force movement in a fast way. You can almost sort of think of it as like speed chess for roguelikes. And what he quickly realized afterwards was that when you do this, it almost looks like the characters are dancing. I think there's a version of this too where like there's some music that was on in the background that happened to line up really well. And of course, that's when there was that stroke of genius at the moment to say, wait, we can make this a rhythm game. And of course, we now have the benefit of Crypt of the Necrodancer, which, that's a wonderful example. And I would actually go so far as to say that's probably not the first time you could point to a game made by Ryan Clark that did that trick. I also know he did a version of sort of Breakout where that's the one, if you don't know the one I'm talking about, there's like a paddle along the bottom of the screen, and there's a bunch of sort of little bricks basically at the top, and the idea is that you sort of play like a single player Pong game, knocking out the different bricks. And for that one, the ball keeps getting bigger and bigger, the one that Ryan Clark did. And you can see how that is overcoming one of the most frustrating parts of Breakout, which is that when you get near the end, there's only like one or two bricks that are in like really precise spots, and you need a lot more control over the ball than you really have. And so it can be it's not that the game is bad, but it can be a bit of a drag to play at those moments. And so in this case here, that is definitely an idea of sort of, hey, there was this thing that I like, but there was something that frustrated me, and here's how I overcame it. And again, I think this is how we wind up with better games. I think this is why we're spoiled for choice right now. But the classics are always worth reading. And likewise the old games are worth engaging with. So I figured, because I'm babbling on right now, I might as well take a moment. Do I have a background in philosophy? I don't not really. So I did want to go to school for philosophy originally, but I actually quite early on took an economics course, and I was utterly fascinated. And so I wanted to make sure that I protected some of that early interest. In fact, the almost embarrassing admission here is that one of the reasons I wanted to get into philosophy was because I tremendously enjoyed one of Firaxis's early games, Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. And that one definitely takes a very... It definitely takes philosophy as sort of its big... it's kind of almost this pillar to sort of drive a lot of the ideas. That was my first encounter with a lot of thinkers. Yeah, exactly. The quotes are great. I mean, some of the fictional quotes are great as well, but some of the philosophers that they choose are exceptionally good writers, right? So like Nietzsche, Kierkegaard. I still really specifically remember a passage from The Sickness Unto Death, which is on that, fabled bookshelf that I've got over here. And that one I remember really distinctly seeing, like, I got to read this book at some point. And I did. And so I think I was quite lucky in the sense that a lot of the the philosophers that I first encountered were very good writers. And then that was enough for me to sort of get a taste for it and then try to dig a little deeper. I remember it wasn't too long after I picked up Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy. And then I have a copy for myself now, but originally I got that from the library because I had just moved out to Vancouver and didn't have a cent to my name. But the so I did take a little bit of time for philosophy. The one thing that was a very pleasant surprise was I did a classics course, and it was specifically on classical philosophy. And actually, I did two of them. One was for pre-Socratics, the other was for Hellenistic. But I was given the opportunity to be a research assistant for undergraduate research assistant for that. So I did get to engage a little more deeply than I normally would. But sometimes this is the thing I really liked in terms of trying to choose how to spend my time with school. I would always take a subset of things that I thought would be interesting, just do it because sometimes learning things is worth it. And so, the philosophy stuff was definitely worth it. Another trick that I would do, and particularly when it would come to sort of the things that were in my major, I would actually sometimes choose some of the most boring course titles, but ones that I thought were important. So a really good example of this would be price index theory. So this would be the theory that goes behind the calculation of things like the consumer price index. And it turns out that actually I studied under a man named Erwin Dewart, who is a really incredibly influential individual in this part. There's an economist, probably not as well known now, but Paul Samuelson, and he's like one of the big ones, and he's has a very large part to play in terms of the more mathematical perspective that I think we kind of accept as a standard for economics right now. But remember, if you read something like John Maynard Keynes, like General Theory of Employment, was it Employment, Interest, and Money? Those arguments aren't necessarily presented in these very formal mathematical models. And of course, this is why you have multiple competing views all claiming to be sort of the proper successor to Keynes. And Samuelson, definitely took mathematics as the language in which to express those ideas. Now, this work that he did, Foundations of Economic Analysis, not an easy text, and I would argue not necessarily all that relevant to today, just because, again, we have the benefit of all of the thinking that happened after his. But I think I've established that I sometimes like reading some of the precursors to the ideas that we have today. And so I read it, and within the opening, basically almost like the foreword, there's Erwin. And while I'm taking his class, I read this. And I had to ask, do you mind if I ask? I was reading the Samuelson book, and you're mentioned in it. It's oh, are you reading such and such? He's like, yeah. And then gives 5 or 6 different anecdotes about all of these incredibly major figures. So again, I took it largely because for me, it's one of these things where I would probably not sit down with the UN manual on calculating price indices on my own, right? I'm a boring person, but I'm not that boring. But what was nice is that by forcing myself to do something where I need to pass a test or something like that, that forces me to confront the idea that I wouldn't normally. And then, of course, I find the thing that's interesting in it, and then that allows me to sort of spend some time on my own. And so, again, for the philosophy interest, that the Firaxis game was enough to give me that initial spark, and then to be able to sort of run with it. And likewise, the library that I have here, it's not just limited to the stuff that I covered in classes, but more importantly, that those classes gave me enough of that foundation to then be able to go in and pick up a few other books. And the other thing that's nice is that a lot of these are very old books, so you can usually find them for a song online with just through a used book website. Now, what I was going to do, so I think we had flowers from Irana's Peace. We had Green Fur, which we actually got in a completely unexpected. We basically just needed to ask the guy. The only one we haven't gotten is Fairy Dust, and it did occur to me we do have a ring of mushrooms. So I'm wondering if maybe there might be actual fairies in this, which we just haven't encountered yet. Oh, we've got Vanguard says, speaking of all these games, during your short and infrequent breaks, I've been thinking of other game ideas and starting putting together some design documents so that once this one is done, I can pick one from the pile and start on a new project. That's cool. I'm also curious, how often do you take, I know it's a little difficult in your case, Vanguard, because you, for some of them, you just maybe don't have, the clearest signal from your audience. I know you've got a dedicated audience, but sometimes I think what you're interested in are the people who maybe didn't pick up the title, but under normal circumstances you would have thought would be somebody who would have bought it. But do you have any mechanism through which you will release a game and do you have an idea in terms of how you kind of get the signals that the market's telling you and how you adapt your plans according to that? Because obviously I know you're into this because you want to make your own stuff, but I imagine at some point you probably want to learn from the previous ones. And thank you very much. I will. I know it's the option is always available to me to tab out to do a walkthrough, and I've so far avoided doing that because I have enough threads to pull on. But it's always nice to have a couple of people familiar with the game, specifically so I know that I'll ask. And you've actually registered me exactly who I am. I do like the idea of struggling with the game, but my commitment has always been that if I do need help, it's a nice opportunity for me to bring in the chat rather than look up a guide originally. Also, if you're playing in DOSBox, there are some major crashing, blocking bugs. I think they're resolvable though. That is also good to know. So I am playing in DOSBox through the GOG version. Normally GOG's done an okay job of resolving these things. But if there is a problem that comes up, then I'll, I don't know. I obviously don't want to immediately assume that you will always be here, but if we run into either of those, or if I get well and truly stuck, I will make sure to appeal to chat. All right, I'll read Vanguard's thing. I'll do a last little recap of what I plan on doing for the game, and then we'll go outside the safety of the house. We've been debating about that a lot, but the short answer is wish lists. Once you reach a certain number on the wish lists, then you'll press the big red launch button, at least insofar as you're... Okay, cool. And so the idea with the wish lists, though, I guess where I'm going with this has always been you're making the game already to get those wish lists. So I was just thinking, does the performance of the previous games have bearing on which in the stack that you go with? Okay, the threads that I wanted to pull on this. So we managed to open a cave near the Antwerp, but that produces a troll, and I don't know if I'm right. Okay, fair enough, Vanguard. So it produces a troll. I imagine, with the whole healing thing, we probably want to use fire. We have a bit of experience with Flame Dart, not as much as Zap, although we're getting a bit better. So one of the things that I'll be doing in between is just improving my ability to throw fire, unless I can find a better way around the troll. We have not visited, I believe it was Erasmus, which I do want to follow up on at some point. Which else was it? Oh yes, the inn at the in the town. I know there were two figures, I think, who said that sort of show up in the evening, speaking of. Sunset approaches on day 6. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm wondering if I can maybe find the figure in the inn. Erana's piece seems to be really good for like getting a free sleep and the windows glow from the lights inside. The sign reads The Hero's Tale Inn. I am. Oh, here we go. The merchant is a rather fat man with a small mustache and beard. He wears a turban. You see a small cat-like creature known as a kata. You've heard that katas are common in the southern deserts. Very good food, very good drink, finest in town. Sit, rest, you will be served by my Shema. I think I'll do... I also learned... I looked at a few forums after I made the magic user choice, and apparently this is apparently the difficult one. Being a fighter is apparently an easier start. Okay. Yeah, but that's fine. It's I do try to take the view as I sort of said before. My view is that the game, by the way, did recommend fighter for the first time, but I was sort of like, I'm probably just gonna play this like once, right? So I'll see what I can do. But now I'm realizing why they made that recommendation. So, all right, room. Very nice room. Very soft beds. Finest in town. Only 5 silvers a night. Very good food. Very good drink. Finest in town. Sit, rest. You'll be served by my Shema. Merchant. Poor Abdullah sits and tries to forget his loss in food and drink. I think he will not be sorry if you join him at his table. Ah, I didn't... Oh, yeah, actually, because in the character... I guess the character creation, you're able to pick your the ability... Like, you can pick abilities outside of your main class. That would have been a smarter thing for me to do. Alas, the brigands stole all of Abdullah's wealth and mine own when they robbed his caravan. Now I'll be forced to stay in this wet, cold land. I know little about them, except they must be wealthy now. Wealth? I hope to return to my homeland with the profits Abdullah, Shema, and I would make from the caravan. Now I fear we will remain here unless someone deals with the brigands and returns our stolen trade items. Well, we know where to find the brigands. A land of golden sand and tall mountains, a city of tall buildings and winding streets. A place where kata can bask in the sun as they sell things in the bazaar. It is our homeland and a place we long to be. In my homeland, a caravan is the only way to travel from city to city. I do also kind of like how I guess this is a little bit of the influence of some of the Bethesda games, like particularly the Elder Scrolls, and how I just kind of assume I can do a little bit of everything. So when I go and try and sneak around, and it tells me it's like you're about as stealthy as the average goon. Like you're nothing special, my friend. So all right, tell me your name. I am Shamin, a poor unfortunate, forced to seek a fortune in this cold land far away from my homeland and my kata people. I feel like we did all of these. Town. Spielberg is a sad place for an innkeeper, for few travelers visit because of the brigands. This is a cold land for a kata. Sheriff? He comes in with his wife sometimes for food. He is very wise and generous. And Otto. There is no end to the food that one can eat. Tell me about the inn. This is the Hero's Tale Inn, where Shema and I will be delighted to serve you. The softest and safest of beds, the richest and finest of foods await you. You have but to command. Shema is my beloved, and she can cook and keep an inn as few others. When she dances, there is true magic. If we ever return to Shapir, then she will again dance. You take a seat at the table nearest the fire. But you could be a paladin who picks locks or a wizard. Yeah. I kind of got the feeling for that. And honestly, like, it is neat. I know there's a feeling in terms of some game design that, like, so one of my small complaints about Skyrim when I played it was it sort of felt like the world put itself on hold for me while I did things. So it's like, yeah, the world's coming to the end, the dragons are coming back, but could you just deliver my mail first? And like when I went back and played Arena, and I've actually played my way all the way up through Oblivion. I haven't tried the remastered version yet, but I have played the main entries in the Elder Scrolls series up to Oblivion, and I now sort of realize that this feeling of like a treadmill of quests is kind of the reason you play those games. So like it took me a bit, like one of the things that was so funny was people thought I was bonkers doing this. But like one of the things I kind of liked about Arena was that, you have first of all, you have like the whole continent of Tamriel, first of all. So it's not fixed to a certain region. But you also have the holidays, and the holidays give you extremely good deals on some of the gear. And that can mean a huge difference, especially in the early stages of the game. And so, I would acknowledge that I would probably miss the holiday if I walked from region to region. But I also need to figure out what to do with myself for the days in between. And so, I'd go into a tavern or whatever and see if there was any work. And then, that would be a reason why I would just sort of go off and do a little side quest. And I liked that. I kind of realized that they're trying to get the tabletop experience of feeling like you can kind of do anything. But sort of, because for me, it was more like, well, I want to do something with my time. I don't want to just completely like mainline the plot. And I think it's pretty clear that you need to spend some time building your skills up. In fact, the game in the manual at least outright tells you that you don't want to just go running off to the main quest. You do need to improve your skill. Actually, the message at the beginning might even say that as well. But that was, the opportunity for the game to sort of work its magic on me. And now I sort of realize that, yes, having, it's okay to not follow every single quest that's in your log. And, in the end, I fully acknowledge, as silly as it may be, that the world doesn't change around you until you go to take an action. They are spending a lot of money on artists and programmers and all of these talented people to make an experience for you, and that if you just create a timer, you potentially miss out on all the value that you bought. So, there are more or less elegant ways to get around it, but I was able to sort of make my peace with it, let's say. God, there was a reason why I was babbling on about this, but yeah, in any case, I've been spoiled a little bit by the style. Oh no, I remember now. Yeah, so the idea that you have sort of three different paths that potentially close you out of certain solutions is kind of interesting. Just because, again, there's that idea that in theory, when you buy a game, you kind of want to have everything. But in this case, I think it's a little more. It feels a little more or it feels a little less extreme, let's say, just because I think there's like getting the ring from the nest. I imagine, if I have the ability to use telekinesis to bring the thing down, probably there's like, maybe the thief can like climb up the tree and the fighter presumably just like throws a rock at it or something like that. But I kind of like the idea that there are different paths that each of the quests or each of the heroes can go through. All right, you take a seat at the table nearest the fire. Oh, it is indeed sad and dangerous times we live in, when a man who struggles daily to keep from starving should be robbed of all his earthly possessions. I just wanted to talk. I am Shema. Allow me to serve you, wanderer from afar. Do you wish food or drink? You have but to give Shamin 5 silvers, and you may have a bed to dream upon. We have very good stew of newborn lamb, along with honey chicken for a mere 3 silvers. Coffee is included in the price of the meal. We have rich black coffee, freshly ground and brewed as only my people do. Such coffee will bring you your full alertness. It is but a silver. It is Shamin who is the speaker for the house, for I have much work to do to serve you. If you wish to know more about such things, then you should speak to him. I am Shema, which means, in the words of the kata, she of the dance. Tell me about your homeland. Our homeland is far to the south. It is called Shapir. Shapir is where we kata come from. It is warm and glowing, and the sun is always bright. Kata are a quiet, gentle people. Dance. It is true I love to dance, but my soul cannot fly so far from home. We already did the name. Tell me about this guy I'm sitting with. Abdullah will always be our guest and friend. Abdullah, too, is from the land of the Shapir. From the land of Shapir. Abdullah will be honored to tell you of that. Yeah, I'm sure. What do you think of the Not Khajiits? I don't remember the timeline. Isn't this before Skyrim? I do like the idea of the. Okay, cool. So was this coincidental, or is there an earlier precedent of a sandy cat people? Oh, sorry. Did I say Skyrim? Anyways, yeah, I meant Arena, or what? Actually, hang on. Weren't the Khajiit? The Khajiit were different in the first Elder Scrolls. Now that I think of it, it was like the second one where they became proper cat people, right? Anyways, it's fine. It's obvious. When I was in elementary school, we did like a unit on Africa, and I really wanted to do a report on the sand cat because like everyone loves cats, right? But the other thing is I do just kind of love the idea. I'm pretty sure some D&D intertexts with cat people and desert civilizations. Okay, cool. Yeah, I always just kind of liked the idea of the desert merchant cats simply because it's the most natural for me. Like I would have guessed that maybe there was like an Egypt connection here, but for me, I do actually find it really amusing just because, cats always like to sort of laze in a sunbeam. So I always just kind of assume that if they're if they're in a desert area, they're just going to curl up under the sun and it's paradise for them. So, all right. I think we already talked about Shamin, but he is my soulmate. All right. I will definitely order some food. I think we have enough to, yeah, we have enough to. There's no need. You're not hungry. Oh, I just wanted to be nice. Okay, I'll get a drink. You caffeine addicts are all alike. Katas are a little more eloquent and less sketchy than Khajiits. True. Actually, also, isn't the very last... I think there were like 5 or 6. You won't come across one snorting moon dust or shooting up scuba. I guess it would be number 5. Does number 5 take place in the desert region? Because I feel like I've seen screenshots of one that like number 4 seems to be really well known. I actually, the 4 is the one I'm familiar with because John Rhys Davies, I think, did some voiceover for it. Oh, is it number 2? Okay, cool. Yeah, so number 4 definitely seems to be very sort of Transylvania, Lovecraftian. I think even like the cover has a very Lovecraft kind of taste for it. Quest for Glory 5 is Greece. Okay. That's interesting. And actually the idea of the eastern parts, I think, also makes a ton of sense because one of the things I always find sort of fun, like we always like to think of ancient... Okay, cool. So I'm assuming Baba Yaga is featured fairly heavily too. At least I know the passphrase to get her hut down. But yeah, like again, back to the pre-Socratics and that, like so many of those cities that a lot of them came from, they're all in like Turkey, and then of course there's the concerns about invasions from Persia, and then of course the hope to conquer Persia. And so, you know, the line that we would draw today is probably not quite as clear to the people at that time, just because, you know, again, they're not going to be looking at Wikipedia. So so yeah, I like the idea. I'm assuming that would be at least a little bit of the reference. But now I really got to try Quest for Glory 5. So I will work my way up through them. Actually, here's a question for you. I know what I'm enjoying is the VGA sort of new, like the quote unquote new version. Like there was the EGA original, which I think was like a text parser. And I know like for the Space Quest games, I think it's like the first 3 are text parsers, which is a little bit more than I can personally handle. Whereas the back half are like more point and clicks. And then I know in the case of Leisure Suit Larry, there was like there's a VGA remaster of the first one, but I think if you did the sequels, you'd be kind of back to the early forms. So is that the same for Quest for Glory? Like, if you want to play Quest for Glory 2, are you back to sort of a text parser? But oh, they did it for both. Okay, cool. Oh, they remade. Sorry, Space Quest 1 and 2. Cool. I should check that out then. And Quest for Glory 2 is a fan remake. Okay, is it one that you'd recommend, or is it what should I man up and try to do the old school one? Tell me about how you got robbed. 2 weeks ago, I was going to be wealthy beyond what you could dream of. I, Abdullah Du, would be the first merchant into this valley this year, but my life was shattered by brigands. Brigands. The band of brigands ambushed us just as we crossed the path into the valley. There were about 12 brigands, including a huge minotaur. There was also a leader and some sort of wizard. They first used some sort of magic which blinded us. Then they overwhelmed my 6 guards and my assistants. If you think you're really enjoying Quest for Glory 1, go to Quest for Glory 2 Classic, but I think you're better off, doing the fan remake. Okay. All my trade goods taken from before me, but now I am now but a beggar, living off the generosity of my friends. The other thing too is like I'm not fully committed to one path or the other. Like I can definitely give the classic a try, but I could I don't know. I feel like it's okay. I'll put it to you this way: if Quest for Glory 1 was not successful and popular in its original form, there never would have been the VGA version, let alone sequels. So like clearly there is a point in which those were, considered to be very good and worthwhile games. And so part of that is just getting into the right, headspace to be able to come to terms with the game as it is. But that said, I will fully acknowledge that I want to give the games the best chance that they can, and so if there is an option available to me to to meet it halfway, then I kind of want to take that. All right. The wizard threw something at us that caused my eyes to be blinded with tears and my nose to be forced to sneeze. I was helpless. The Minotaur is a creature with the head of a bull and the body of a man. They are said to be very strong. The leader was wearing a cloak, so I couldn't see his face. His voice was rather high-pitched, though. I bring you that which you ordered. May it please and satisfy you. It is kind of neat to see the passage of time, right? Like both the the idea of sunset, or like the passage of time through the day, but also the fact that like if I order a coffee, I'm gonna have to wait for it a bit, and then mid conversation there's gonna be an arrival. I don't know why, but I'm actually I like it. I think it's a neat touch. The beverage goes down smoothly and well. Permit me to clear the table for you. The wizard was very short, and he giggled most of the time. I couldn't understand what he was saying. Here I pay good money for men to protect me, and what do they do when I need protection? They run away. One man died to defend my treasure. You just can't hire good guards anymore. I had treasures carefully brought from Shapier with me. I even had a magic carpet with me. Tell me about your friends. Even though they too lost a fortune when the brigands stole from me, Shamin and Shema are caring for this frail shadow of a great man. She is the finest of cooks, outside myself, that is, but her fine food is as dust in my mouth, for I am but a beggar. Quest for Glory 3 is also very interesting, set in Africa and depicts both northern and sub-Saharan. Interesting. The game doesn't get enough praise. It's done really well. Lots of memorable scenes. So I was going to say, I'm probably not going to knock them down sort of like one after the other. I'll probably have some breaks in between them, but unless like this really falls apart for me, I'm quite willing to go through the full series. And in fact, what you're describing is like, I would ideally like to work my way up to number 4, because number 4 does seem to just have an outsized reputation in the way that some of the others don't. And so it's largely for the reasons that you just described. Like once you do that, it doesn't mean that like number 4 has an unearned reputation or anything like that. But it's more that when you have something that all the other games seem to be almost living in the shadow of, it can sometimes be difficult to appreciate some of the others on their own terms. My favorite example of this, I wouldn't have normally brought it up except for the conversation we had before. I was showing someone a game I really like, Sid Meier's Civilization Beyond Earth. And I think the problem with Beyond Earth was that Alpha Centauri is such a well-regarded game, and rightly so, right? Um, that any time that you seem to be taking the mantle of that game, there are expectations sort of probably beyond what can be delivered. Because again, like I like Alpha Centauri, but I don't think it's a flawless game. I think it's a game that has this very singular place in both my imagination in terms of how it shaped my interests and ultimately the subjects I pursued in school. But I don't think I could turn around and tell someone, oh, do you like Among Us? Well, let me set you up with Alpha Centauri, right? It doesn't work that way. So I do remember liking Beyond Earth when it first came out, and I didn't think it was entirely wrong for people to say, reskin of Civilization 5. I do think it's more than that, but I can kind of see how it might be a bit closer to Civ 5 than what you might normally expect something with the Civilization name and like a new release from Firaxis. But what I do tend to find is a lot of the criticism for Beyond Earth, which again, to be clear, I think is a very good game. I also think a lot of the criticism is very much focused on the game as it was at release and completely ignores all of the things that they added in the Rising Tide expansion. And I really, truly feel that game is due for a re-examination. I do feel that is one that has been treated rather unfairly, and only for its comparison to a game which I feel that maybe had some rose-colored glasses in terms of the comparison that was being made. So you're never going to be able to compare with people's idea of Alpha Centauri compared to the implementation of whatever game you do, however good it is. And so all of that is just a long way of saying that I, as far as I can tell, seem to be on track for liking something like Quest for Glory 4, right? I like this basic experience here, the idea of there being some sort of Slavic folklore and a little bit of Lovecraft, a little bit of fame. Apparently Jennifer Hale was also a voice actress in Quest for Glory 4. I can see exactly why that's the one that a lot of people talk about. But that doesn't mean, I'll tell you right here, all the stuff that I think is cool about this game, the different class systems, the fact that there's a little bit of an RPG in addition to the point and click, like those are all clearly present in the first game. And so it does make me wonder what elements are waiting in the sequels for me to enjoy. Oh, I didn't realize that she's in number 5 as well. I always need to speak up to the Canadian angle. I think she has like a personal studio in Victoria now. All right, Shamin. He is the very Prince of Katas. Ah, Shapier, beautiful land of golden sands and shining sun, the heart of civilization. Alas, she is plagued with fierce jinn and ifrits who seek to drive all men and Katas from the land. But I can speak no more of the homeland I shall never see again. Instead, I will die in this cold, forsaken land, bereft of all I love. I trade the treasures of one land for that of another, but the brigands have stolen every treasure I had, and I am a merchant no more. The table feels rough to the touch, but very solid. That would never that would never work. The table is too bored and loggy to respond. Planks anyway, you tell it. You look closely and read Genie's Lamp for Rent. Inquire in Quest for Glory 2, Trial by Fire for details. Oh, it's just another cheap plug. All right. It says sunset approaches, so I feel like there's still more that we can do here. I'm actually going to take a second and see if there's anything else in the Adventurers Guild. This is one of the other challenges that I face, actually. Okay. Because things potentially change as the day goes by, you enter the Adventurers Guild Hall. Okay. Nothing new for us here. But yeah, the fact that there are changes that happen over the course of the day does potentially... It throws me off for a little bit just because it may mean that there's somebody I miss. I did sign my name in the Adventurers Guild book. You'd better not. The goon would probably clobber you with his yo-yo if he thought you were going into the sheriff's office without permission. What if I have a crime to report? I think signing the book was actually one of the first things I did. Now, I'll try staying in the inn, but it may be that the gate closes. All right, hostile intent is evident. You prepare for battle. Don't have enough magic points to cast that spell. All right. I think in this case I just need to go straight left, although I think there's also a wall that will keep me from... Yeah. Where I can, I'm trying to get... Do I have levitate? You find a single silver coin. Carefully polish it and place it in your pouch. What a way to make a living. I don't think I do. We've got open, detect, zap, calm, flame dart, and fetch. Ah, okay. Oh, crap. This is definitely one of my Oh, no. There's no escape. I mean, I could try my chances, but it doesn't strike me. Oh, yeah, no. So the reason why I'm mentioning staying at the inn is that I have slept at Arana's Peace each time. So part of it was just to pursue variety, I guess, for lack of a better term. This isn't really working out for me here. So I was originally going to check the mushrooms to see if there was some indication of fairies. I still want to do that, but obviously I'm doing so in a much more hostile environment. Okay, night is still young. I also want to be careful about this because I believe past a certain point, I won't get a full night's sleep. Oh, crap. All right, well. You find 5 silver coins and carefully place them in your pouch. Well, there goes my... there's my... that covers my meal. Well, this is different from what I was expecting. Oh, looky! A human! What's it doing here? Yuck! Let's have some fun with it. Humans! Why is it always humans? Go away! You can't play! I think it wants to play with us. Human, do you know how to dance? How do you dance? 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 I guess we'll find out. Will you dance for us? Can you dance? Yes. Then dance for us. Humans can't dance. Let's see you dance. Bet you can't dance. Dance for us. All he wants to do is dance. Let's see you. Dance! Dance! Ooh, it does know how to dance. Wowie. This is neat. Gee, I didn't think it could do this. Well, I just love it. You love an Antwerp. Do not. Do too. Wow. All right, so I guess the tricky part here is I can't undo what I've seen inside chat with the fact that I was asked about an empty flask. So I'm assuming this is how I get the fairy dust, although this is kind of relying on guilty knowledge from chat. Oop, it's empty, maybe you should recycle it. What a guy. No, that's not working. He came into our circle. Who invited you here? How rude. You can't come in here. Now you're really gonna get it. What an insult. You'll just have to dance. Have to dance. Dance, dance, dance. He's no fun. He fell right over. The land of 1,000 dances. For such a wimpy-looking creatures, these fairies sure can play rough. You never danced so hard in your entire life. which is now over. So the funny thing here is I completely forgot to reload. So what I'll try and do here, that's on me for not. I mean, the good news is that we did learn something. Like I wasn't necessarily expecting to find something there because I thought it was going to be going during the day. But I'll quickly go through the encounter. I'll just like go through the dialogue trees in each case. I will spare you the readings. Actually, I know for some of these I'm kind of duplicating. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll figure this out. I will confess, it's a little weird to just silently click through all these options here, but I'm trying to get back to the trying to get back on the path. Yeah, actually, the funny thing is I had 178, so obviously I did something to get the point. This feels like a lot of ceremony for something that has now been reduced to basically a lineup in Starbucks. So yeah, I guess the funny thing here is oh, that's really cool. What are you doing in sorry, I realize I've completely gotten off it. I'll actually confess I'm not 100% sure where I got that 1 point, but I figure that's something I can work on a little bit later. What are you doing your master's in, if you don't mind me asking? Classics focusing on just the language. Okay, that's really cool. Actually, it's funny too because of course I mentioned Nietzsche, and I know he originally started as a philologist. So, and I mean, had enough of a. I mean, like obviously the first work um, is a proper like. I mean, we recognize him as the philosopher now, but at the time it would have not necessarily been the first work of a a philosopher. It would be more of a classics work. Yeah, Birth of Tragedy. But I know like he kind of pursued the field enough that he had he had enough opinions to like refer to the pre-Socratics as the pre-Platonic philosophers, sort of implying that Socrates had more in common with figures like Heraclitus than sorry, just a second. Than with Plato. And I mean, obviously he's kind of prone to his own maybe let's say outrages in terms of his style. So whether or not I would assign like a heavy weight to some of that, I'm less sure of. But it's I would definitely say reading his stuff. It's very hard to see him as someone who phoned it in when reading those texts. All right. Not as much as last time. I think in this case, I'm going to wind up in the circle a little too early. It's a ring formed of large and rather unusual looking mushrooms. This used to be a member of a famous rock group, but it decided to split the scene. So, I think probably my best bet here is to just wait the hour. The standard Hellenist curriculum would necessarily have to feature reading Plato. Whether the classicist decides to go in all in philosophy is another story. But the very study of ancient Greek is much more tightly coupled with the history of philosophy and science than Latin. You can kind of avoid philosophy entirely and be a happy Latinist. That's interesting. I mean, I'm assuming everybody knows that all of Gaul is divided into 3 parts. And actually, the shame is I do have some textbooks for the ancient languages. So I do have Athanase for Greek. I can't remember the Latin textbook that I have. And I do genuinely want to go into it. Because like for me, my favorite poet is Ovid. Actually, let me just take a minute. Actually, it's just called Introduction to Latin. So all I did was go to my my university's textbook, like the bookstore, and look at what the courses were. I'm very curious. So who is the scholar? I don't know. So my knowledge, I read Ovid purely out of purely for pleasure. So I've never studied it. But definitely that is a long, definitely a long-standing favorite of mine. So I've read the Amores, I've read Metamorphoses, I've read it obviously in translation. So everything that I read from Ovid would have been through the Penguin Classics, except for Metamorphoses, which would be Charles Martin's translation, which I quite liked. And Bernard Knox does the introduction for it, so it's really wonderful for that, for sure. And I think I don't know. I also like back when I was in middle school. We did do in English. We properly like did a proper section on satire, and like the subject was the text that we did was Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. And like it's funny because I've found that there's actually a number of people who have never been exposed to A Modest Proposal, which really surprises me. But on the other hand, usually among the people who know, there's always sort of like, oh yes, and we'll refer to the one that's about eating the babies. And like, I don't know, I think it's a well done bit of satire. I certainly don't think it's the limit of Swift's, satirical abilities. But that was one that really made its mark on me. And I have gone out of my way to enjoy satire in all of its forms. So it probably won't surprise you to know that Lucian is, so actually I've read much less Lucian than I should. But of course he's got that big influence on Swift. And so, yeah, I just think there is something about, I would say in addition to sort of the approachability, and I mean, there's just something really amazing about the way that Metamorphoses just winds its way through and shifts its way through the stories. And that was one that I was caught. I wasn't even a particularly sophisticated reader of literature, and I really got to appreciate what he was doing with it, and I was amazingly impressed by it. But all the little touches, right? Like whether it's something like Fasti, where you have Jupiter portrayed as this vicious rapist, and then immediately following it with the comparison between the Emperor and Jupiter, or you've got the ending. I've always been really struck by the ending of Metamorphoses, because you have the apotheosis of Julius Caesar, but of course I've always taken the final transformation of it to be the statement of immortality of the poet, and of course placing him beyond Caesar. So it's just one of those ones where, in addition to, I think, the approachability of the writing, it's one of those ones where I really do feel that there's just a particular alignment of ideas that worked for me. And again, it's one of those ones that I liked the early stuff I read enough. So, Ars Amatoria, Remedia Amatoria. And I did then read the Exile, the works from the Exile. So, it's not always, they're not always going to be the ones that are just sort of like funny to read or anything like that. It's just in general, yes. And again, I'd love to read it in the original, but that's more of an aspirational target. If I can, the thing is, like, I am Canadian, so. And by the way, I'd love to know who you the professor you're looking at, because I'm sure there's some material that I can find online to bring myself up. Needless to say, this is stuff I'm interested in reading. So if you have an author I can read, I'd be very interested. Yeah, I'm still trying to learn a bit of French, so start with that. But as a treat, I do plan to try and take on Latin, and the goal really is to be able to read this poet that's had such an influence on me in the original, and hopefully get a little bit more of an appreciation for it. Well, I just read it so that I can hit my mandatory quota of thinking of the Roman Empire a certain number of times a week for my, my man card. But yeah, no, I liked the obviously the stuff I started with was the Greeks. Actually, the one of the I haven't read all of it, but I had this really nice kind of a nice little coincidence that happened. So I mentioned that one of the things I like about reading old books is that it's often quite easy to find them for a low price on used bookstores. So I have a selection. The collection I have is called Neoplatonic Philosophy. So what was kind of nice about the classical philosophy course that I took was when they did the Hellenistic side. Normally, you sort of finish with Plotinus, but it was nice because the prof made the choice to actually go a little bit further. So I think we went to there was Iamblichus and Proclus. I think are the ones that we did. And it was sort of that time where it becomes a little bit harder to sort of distinguish between philosophy and religion. Not that that was particularly easy to do in some cases anyway, but I feel like with the Neoplatonists, that's really where you're blurring the lines a little bit. And I sort of recognize that I got sort of the highlights of Plotinus, but there's clearly more to it than than you're gonna get as like a small section inside of a course. So I decided it's like, well, I can, at this point I have a few more worldly resources. I have like a day job. So, and I found out that there was a new edition of the Enneads in translation. I've not read them fully through, but I thought I would get a copy so that I could aspire to read all of them. Excuse me. I'd done some, and there's some that I found were really there were some that I found baffling, but what I was more surprised by the ones where I was quite I was very surprised by how much of it had sort of made sense, and then I'm like, okay, no, actually this is not something I'm just gonna have to work on, let's say. So that was kind of one of the catalysts to get the whole thing. But what had happened was I ordered what I thought was this new edition of yes, that's exactly the one. Yeah. But what they sent me was the Stephen McKenna translation. But it was actually a book so old that it does not have an ISBN or like any of the other identifying information. So like, to the credit of the place, like they completely refunded me. I said, it's like, look, I don't want to make too much of a fuss, but like, I paid what I paid thinking that I was getting, a new complete edition of this, and like very clearly this is a book that is in the public domain. I could easily like get this online. And like, yeah, no, that's fair. Like, could you just tell us like what book you got? And like, and they go through like, could you just tell us like the ISBN and so on and so forth? And like, I had to be honest with this. Like, I'll send you a photo if you want, but like this thing does not have like these markers that you want. Like here's what I do have. But and they said, it's like, yeah, no, that's fine. We've refunded you. You don't worry about sending the book back. Like you can donate it, you can keep it, whatever. And what was interesting for me, actually, let me just I'll get them off the shelf just because I want to double check a couple things. Um, I'll confess, I actually don't see Boy Stones in the. I know Gerson. Actually, it's funny because I got my prof did invite me to a sort of a symposium that they held, and I actually got to see Lloyd Gerson present on something. It was way beyond me. Yeah. No, that's totally fine. I understand completely. Um, but yeah, the thing that I was so funny to me about the thing that was so funny to me about the McKenna book was I did not realize, like, so what had caught my attention about the collection edited by Lord Gerson was I didn't realize how long it had been since there was sort of this single like complete translation. And what I also didn't realize was how McKenna like just made it his life's work to translate the Enneads. Like, again, that idea of really connecting with an author, and I mean on his own, like an interesting figure, like certainly did a lot of things in his life. And what was particularly interesting about this is just another branch, a game that I pretty frequently stream, or not stream, but do on YouTube, but I used to stream it a lot, was a game called Cultist Simulator. And it's got a more recent follow-up called Book of Hours. And that one definitely takes the cult. So like the cultist thing is not just, we're going to throw Lovecraft in to make a buck. Cultist Simulator was the first game by a micro studio. And it's very much this game where you're facing quite a bit of precarity. It's pretty clear that the pursuit of the occult is sort of this pursuit of an ambition or a dream that maybe the real world doesn't even understand, but you do have to live in the real world and face that constraint of sort of time and money. And so they do take that occult angle quite seriously. And I mean, it's also a game by a British couple, so the idea here of a cult is like less kind of David Koresh and more like, Freemasons. So in this case, it does take its subject quite seriously, right? It's clear that they did their research, and of course, when you do look at a lot of these esoteric traditions, they very often will have this connection to Neoplatonism. And so finding out about Stephen McKenna and William Butler Yeats, and the fact that apparently there was like a tiff between William Butler Yeats and Aleister Crowley, it's Crowley, and just all of these weird little occult anecdotes that maybe don't directly find their way into the game, but particularly this idea of, that singular obsession at translating Plotinus and dedicating his life to this, this pursuit that people maybe would never quite understand. It was like, this guy is obviously straight out of Cultist Simulator, which of course is the wrong way to look at it, right? Cultist Simulator is instead drawing from, the history that, but, obviously I played Cultist Simulator first, so I was just utterly fascinated at how well this stuff lined up. So, and again, like, I'm always very amused at how, I went to university, I dabbled in classics for a little bit, I enjoyed what I read. I have a little bit of a library, but I didn't know about Stephen McKenna, and it took the delivery of the wrong book, when I was looking for the modern translation, to find out about this fun little bit of history. So. We've got Plato was popularized in Western Europe by Fincio, but his Medici patrons actually wanted him to translate the Corpus Hermeticum first. Fascinating. I did not know that. All right. I might as well get another save in just in case I fall to the the dance. I should also say my interests aren't just limited to what we've been talking about, because one of the early favorites for a while has been Machiavelli. But one of the things that I do get to appreciate about Machiavelli, with the benefit of reading some of the earlier writers, obviously being able to see him as someone who read, much older texts very closely and sort of drew on those for his own writing. That maybe just gave me a slightly better grounding. Although I will also say this is probably another example of thinkers who are very good writers coming up as well, because obviously with stuff like the Mandrake, he's obviously best known for The Prince. I do slightly prefer Discourses on Livy myself. I'm wondering if I can do something to... The fairies look like little dancing lights, but you get a strong sense that they are female with butterfly wings. The fairies can avoid your grasp easily. It's empty. Maybe you should recycle it. You hold out your hand. What else could you do? No peeking. I think it's cheating. Oh, just give it some dust. You needed a bath anyway. You place the dust carefully away in an empty flask. Cool. I actually just got, well, not just got, it was like a couple months ago, but yes, obviously the lesser known of the arts of war, but as a kind of interesting comparison to the art of war between Persian-Greek wars and the Ottoman-Italian states, I value a lot. Yeah, no, this is actually, the funny thing is that while I do, like, I like reading, but it had occurred to me for a while how little of it little of it is the wrong term, but what I found was, like, it's easy to sit down and play a game. And of course, the engagement with the game is immediate. And it's actually quite, I play Civilization, for crying out loud. It's really easy to not just be instantly engaged with the game, but for it to kind of have that marginal minute, even that marginal hour. It's quite easy to give that up. And maybe I realize, like, if I were to start the week saying this is the number of hours that I want to play games, and then I were to compare that to the number that I actually do, like through my revealed preferences, I have a feeling that second number would be quite a bit larger. And this is also true for, film. Now I do tend to watch pretty actively. I used to work in movies for a little bit, so it's hard for me to switch that off, which I find very enjoyable. But even then, even if it's a more active kind of viewing, I think it's very easy. Just, I'm like anybody, right? It's easy to binge a series. I actually just started watching the TV version, like the modern version of The Day of the Jackal, and I actually think it's quite done. I think Eddie Redmayne's really good in it, and I can't remember the woman's name, but there's like she's a member of the British Secret Services pursuing him. I'm really frustrated I can't remember because she does such a great job in it. But yeah, anyways, and then there's a bunch of characters from, or a bunch of actors from I think a pretty interesting British police procedural called Blue Lights, which I quite like. So, just overall, like it's a series I've been really enjoying. But again, like it's so easy to just give up time without even really thinking it. Um, and then by contrast, right, it doesn't take a ton for me to read. I'll do it. But I do tend to find sometimes, right, there can be that restlessness, or, maybe I'll try reading while there's something on in the background. And I didn't always necessarily do that. I can remember even before going to university, like going to the library and dedicating the time to read something without a music player, without, anything but me and the book. And so, Knight, thank you very much for the raid. Um, but all of that said, like what I personally found was that was a fairly easy fix for me. I just now recognizing the ambition compared to the reality. I just kind of more jealously guard that time. I might have some music on in the background as long as it's, preferably something without like lyrics or anything like that. But yeah, like to actually just, sit down, no screens, just focus on the text. And I probably wouldn't compare with a philologist, but I would say it's something I like. I don't even really need to spend that much time doing it, but I've recognized the difference from how I remember, like my favorite times reading, and maybe reconnecting with that a little bit more. And what I guess it sort of does, I guess the best way I could describe is it's almost sort of like solving the cold start problem. I'm doing well, Knight. I'm sorry I can't do a proper shout out for you because I'm in a game that's done in DOSBox, and as soon as I tab out, it shrinks the screen to its native resolution, which makes it hard for me to see. But I really do appreciate your raid. What were you playing tonight, if you don't mind me asking? But yeah, anyways, sorry, Mr. Ong. I kind of rambled off the point. But yeah, it's a funny one. Like, I think the biggest thing is that I find that because you don't have that immediate pleasure of like when you're in the zone with a book, which sometimes games can do a little earlier. In fact, sometimes I'd argue maybe even social media, if you're in a really good argument or something, can sometimes do that. My solution to that has just been to take that time and just put a big fence around it. All right. I'm going to guess I need to go to Arana's piece at this point, so... Yeah, well, I'd have to... I mean, at this point, I'd imagine you'd have to demand a refund if you read... Kiss a tree for me. I guess I'll have to go back to the Dryad. Oh, I probably shouldn't be in here, but... Okay, Baba Yaga should be to the north. Probably not a good time to go after the bandit, but... you know what? Face me! All my health is back. I'm trying to get my dodge up a bit, but well, I think now we're ready to just go fight that troll. It's cool to hear that reading's always been a big part of your life. You had to spend a few years getting a career going where that was less of a priority. So going back to school for classics was a way to... Yeah, this is the thing, actually. One of the really striking moments for me, I won't say that this like caused a big change in me, but it was definitely a moment where I wanted to make sure that I was engaging a little more with reading than I... Maybe I... But yeah, one of the things I sort of reflected on was I was going to the library, and I'll admit I'm in Ottawa, so I kind of recognize that that's not going to be the same as like a Vancouver library. But one of the things that really struck me was going to the library was there was like a mom and her kid going into the library, and like the kid was just that kind of excited, like that you can't fake, like bouncing up and down, the level of enthusiasm for the idea of going to the library and getting some new books. And I had this really distinct memory of being like, I used to feel that way about like going to the library and reading. I'm like, and I was like, you know, there's that moment, it's like, what the hell changed? Right? And again, it's like, I have the option at any point that I want. I could easily delete my Steam library. I could cancel a Game Pass subscription. You know, it would not be that hard for me to shut out games. I'd even go so far as to say, as far as the streaming stuff is concerned, right? You know, there's other stuff that I can do. There are people who do just chatting. There are people who do programming. There's, you know, Book Talk's the thing. So maybe there's a way of doing something like that on Twitch. There's, you know, the game thing is by choice, and I don't necessarily think it's bad. But it is worth reflecting a bit in terms of what my relationship with reading is. And especially if it's more, I'm spending more time reading things for sort of like a functional purpose, right? I'm reading it because it's related to work, or I'm reading it because, you know, I want to solve this particular programming problem or something like that. All of that's good, right? That's what books are for. But you know, being able to see that and say, it's like, yeah, you know what? You know, if nothing else, go back to Ovid, right? It's like, how do I get that feeling I had the first time I sat down and read Metamorphoses? And, you know, the answer to that is read a damn book. You know, don't have a podcast on in the background. You know, maybe some music if you really want. And then just, you know, just do it. And then, you know, sometimes I didn't really find it hard to get back in, but I imagine if it's been a while, maybe for some people it's going to be like needing to rebuild the muscle or anything like that. But it's one that I think is worth it. Chaz IM says, probably going to lurk a little, then crash. Wanted to touch base. Shay Tranqui here. Did the name change to match your new YouTube channel, pursuing becoming an Iron Man? Just wanted to say hi and let you know. Hope all is well. So first of all, thank you very much for stopping by. I know I'm starting very late for my usual time, so I appreciate you coming in. And congratulations on the new channel. I'm sure for those of you along with Knight97, which by the way, I don't know if I missed it in the chat, but I don't think I saw what you were playing. But in addition to checking out Knight97, I do recommend for those of you that are interested, you can check out ChazIam's channel. I realize those are two very generic shout outs, but I'm contending with the fact that I don't have my usual usual bots to work with. You are getting tired. Uh-oh. This one I may have to run. The only fault was you've been on a Minecraft cycle again, working through a mod pack. So I'm not familiar with mod packs, but actually kind of want to see that. I have played Minecraft. I've not played a lot of Minecraft, so it's actually one that I'm still unfamiliar with. Another thing I noticed, the internet has become less textual and static, much more audiovisual and dynamic. I wonder how much of that has an influence on... That's actually not a bad point. I mean, I will... In the defense of the internet, I will say, right, we do have things like Substack. We do have a number of different ways in which people are engaging with text. But I mean, even when I pay for a subscription to some sites, I find a lot of them will have some kind of video component on it, and okay, it's just a standard mod then. But yeah, I will say that I am not crazy about the fact that basically any site that I go to, and particularly ones that I sort of pay for the text for, really, really want me to watch a video. Even putting it, like hovering it over the text. And I'm like, no, there's a reason I'm here, and it's not your video content. All right, that was a unexpectedly full day. Your hunger has been totally satisfied. You don't need another piece of fruit. What time is it? Middle of the night. You sleep comfortably among the fragrant flowers. You awake as the sun begins to rise. Okay, so I have a couple of ideas about how I want to do today. So I think, given that oh, actually, I should probably get something to eat. I'll confess, I was expecting the fairy dust to be a little bit more of an ordeal. But I think what I can do at the minimum, I can stop by the stables. Okay, actually, bring it. I guess I could actually fire the fire darts at the brigand on their way. But yeah, so I want to try and get a little more practice for the fire. I want to drop off the fairy dust and also go to the stables just so I can get swole. Or at least it's suggested that that's how I get swole. Now, I think one of the other things that's a little funny here is that if I recall correctly, so Talking with the Dryad said that the potion is to remove a... I feel like if you saw someone with the ability to throw fire from his hands, you should run. I agree. But I'm glad that the brigands have decided to allow me to practice. But yeah, so the Dryad said that it was something to remove a curse with. I believe the Lord or whatever is dealing with a curse, but I don't know if I've ever formally been assigned a like remove curse like quest. I have a feeling that I've got an item that maybe I haven't quite I've gotten a little prematurely, but it's fine. We'll work with it. We'll start with you have 1 flask of fairy dust. So you say this is one of the ingredients for the Dispel Potion. Well, I'd better get started making it. The Dispel Potion will take a while to make. Why don't you come back later? Shortly after, she packs up and leaves. Just a minute while I raise the gate. But yeah, I have at least, I don't know, I'd say like 2 big-ish tasks to try and work out still. But for now, I'm going to clean the stables. So you're back. Need some work? Yes. Good. Come in here and take a rake. I don't pay you to rest. Get to work now. Okay, come on over here. The stableman hands you some coins and says, now you're 5 silvers richer. Oops. There we go. Show off. Probably could have read that, sorry. I don't know how long it takes to make a potion. Nope, score went up, so here's the Potion of Dispel. Well, my name is Amelia Appleberry, but mostly I'm just known as the healer. I will be happy to sell you some potions. I live here with my pet, Terry. Oh, that's my pet, Terry the pterosaur. He has a girlfriend, Teresa, with a nest in the oak outside my door. Terry keeps me company and listens while I chatter as I work. They're a species of flying lizard. I understand they can grow quite large in the south. I make and sell a healing potion, power potion, vigor potion, and undead unguent. This potion is used to heal damage and keep wounds from getting worse. It has gotten pretty dangerous around here, and a healing potion can be quite useful in a serious situation. Vigor Potion is used to revitalize yourself after vigorous exercise. It helps to restore stamina. Stamina is a measure of the energy the body uses as you work or play. Power Potions restore the energy needed to cast spells. Undead Unguent is used to drive off the minor undead such as zombies or floating spirits. It doesn't last long, so you should use it near where you're going to encounter such things. There are not too many zombies in the land. Too damp, I suppose. There are some floating spirits, I have heard. Floating spirits are the ghosts which usually hang around graveyards at night. They are dangerous, so don't go near them unless you use the Undead Unguent first. I have the skill to use my magic to create potions. I'm a bit proud about it. Not everyone can do that, you know. Fairy dust obviously comes from fairies. They dance around mushroom rings when it is night. Fairies are magical beings, so be careful around them. A fairy ring is a circle of mushrooms. Fairies dance in them at night, which makes the mushrooms very magical. Those fairies are cute, but they play rough. I always need ingredients for making potions. Right now, I need some of Irana's flowers, magic mushrooms, troll beard, and let me think. Oh yes, Cheetor claws. I will happily pay you if you bring me some. I'll also buy back any empty flasks you have so that I can recycle them. Waste not, want not, after all. The trolls around here are tough monsters that cannot stand the light of day and so are found only at night or in caves. They're very difficult to kill, but I will pay 2 healing potions for the beard of a troll. Oh, well. Why didn't you say so earlier? I use flowers from Irana's Peace to the north in nearly all of my potions. They have some of the magic of the place even when they are dried. I will pay you 5 silvers for a flask full of flowers. Flask? Okay. Almost due north of here is the meadow called Irana's Peace. It is a very magical area, and I understand that it is a place of safety. It is beautiful all year, for the flowers are always in bloom. The Cheetor looks like a cross between a panther and a man. It is vicious and tough. Unless you are a very tough fighter, you had best try and get away from it. If you do manage to kill it, then I will pay you 5 silvers for each claw. I will pay you 1 silver for each empty flask you bring to me so I can use it for more potions. Mandrake root is used in a variety of spells, mostly for evil purposes. Mandrake must be pulled from a dead man's grave at midnight. The root is particularly powerful. You can see Spielberg Castle from my yard outside. The Baron lives there with only his guards for company, so I hear. Poor man, he hasn't been the same since his son and daughter were taken from him. He was just a young, dashing man when he last rode off. He never returned. A dear child, I can still picture her with her beautiful blonde hair done up in braids. She was so sweet. It is hard to believe she is gone. Those brutes. I'm always having to heal someone they've beaten up and robbed. I hate thieves. Oh, that I didn't know. The peace piece. All right, I'm going to go to the falls. That's one of the kind of question marks that I've had. So it should be 2 down and then 1 to the right. This one is partly just practice for my my skills. Hello? Cool. I mean, I don't see any way that I'm going to be able to go up there. I guess now that I know there's a levitate spell, that's probably going to be how I make it. Which actually suggests to me there's one place I haven't checked out yet. I don't know. It's all good. I mean, if it gets to a point where I like, I think the trick for me is I usually clamp down pretty hard on backseating because usually cracking that door open means that like everybody piles in. I'm not allowed to sort of be confused, and it sort of spoils the fun. But the thing is that like I also don't want to keep people from being able to engage with something that they're excited by. So when it's something where it's sort of like, we didn't actually know this at the time, or like it wasn't that big of a deal. Like I try to be reasonably chill about it. Um, so yeah, like the big one I've always appreciated, and it's sort of like what you said before. I always have the like. I think the thing is like we live in the age of the internet, right? So I always have the option of I always have the option of going and checking online. And so the fact that I haven't done that probably suggests that there's something that I want to do. Because for me, like I've never found being stuck. Oh, actually, you know what? I got this wrong. I'm gonna have to go left in a minute. Actually, right now. So I've personally never found being stuck in a game to be a deal breaker. There are times where I'll feel stuck and okay, well, I'm not saving my magic points anymore, so. Ah! Yeah, so, I've always sort of felt that rather than look up a wiki or something like that is, as long as the chat's being respectful and sort of giving me enough space to sort of make mistakes and move on, then the other half of that deal is that when I do feel that I need some help, obviously, the first place I would want to go would be chat rather than the wikis. And yeah, I don't know. It's like it's a. I think everybody's going to kind of find out what their level is, but again, it's to where I can like to not be too hard on people who make like an honest mistake, while also trying to preserve the things that will keep the game interesting for me. Oh come on, let me switch the. There we go. At some point, I do want to maybe try and spend the night at the inn at some point, but I believe this part is the one that I haven't mapped out yet. So I figure, oh, hang on. No, it's the next one over here. There we go. So I think after this one, I'm actually going to need to figure... Well, I guess I didn't really check out the bandit area that much. It's quite an impressive rock group. The road seems to wind forever up the mountain. A sign appears. It reads, "Welcome to Magic Mountain." Have a great one, Chazayam. And congratulations again on your... By the way, feel free to... if you want, do feel free to link your YouTube in there if people haven't followed through yet. Another sign appears. It reads, "Now go home." I'm assuming at some point a detect magic wouldn't go amiss. It looks like a cross between a castle and an angry purple rhinoceros. You feel as though you have just scaled the Matterhorn in full armor. What a climb! You can see all of Spielberg Valley from here. After you finally catch your breath, you see that you have reached the rather eccentric-looking house that you saw from below. There is an ugly gargoyle above the entrance. Stand fast! He who would the wizard see first must answer questions 3. What is your name? Gatin. Cromwell. What is your quest? I want to be a hero. What is the thieves' password? I don't know. At least if you're a thief, you're shame enough to lie about it. Come on in. The wizard will see you now. Go directly up the tower. Do not dally. The room is full of odds, ends, and stuff. The wizard must be a real character. All right. I feel a little bad doing this, but it is a bit past midnight, and I do have work in the morning and some other things to do. So I know this is a bit of a shorter stream, but I also started at the time I normally wrap up. So this seems like a not bad place to finish. This next week's going to be a little funny as far as working out. Okay, great. That was actually not a bad time to finish then. So just for everyone's benefit, I will be at the local meetup on Wednesday. I stream so hopefully this will be good for you. So normally I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This was a late start for me, but the one exception will be the third Wednesday of the month. That's when there's a local game dev meetup that I attend. And then on Canadian holidays, basically, I usually take those for myself, but I sort of reserve the option to stream. But yeah, in general, Monday, Wednesdays, Friday evenings, I'll do the stream. I'm not exclusively going to be doing Quest for Glory, so I've been doing a fun one, Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop, and then I do have a couple more games which I'm going to be focusing on. So I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to do Quest for Glory Friday or not. It kind of depends on how I'm feeling. But yes, I was going to say, talking more about classics and such. I mean, I have a feeling that I think if I were to be talking to an expert, I think I've already exhausted my, my knowledge. So I don't know how well I would be holding up my end of the conversation, but I'm always very eager to learn. And especially it sounds like, as you mentioned, your background is not necessarily a perfect overlap with what I wound up studying. So I think it'll be a great chance for me to learn a bit more of the stuff that I missed because of the over specialization of the electives. But yeah, I figure at some point our paths will probably cross on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday evening, and I look forward to that chat. And as of course, for the rest of you, for those of you here for Quest for Glory, I am going to see this through to the end. But again, it will be divided with potentially a couple of other games. The other one that we had done was Jurassic World Evolution 2. And I would like to fold in a few more sort of builder or simulation games in the future if I can. So that would be great. I mean, these are the one thing I will say, I think most people have kind of realized that the nice thing about the internet is that you may be like the only person in your hometown that's interested in something, but as soon as you go on the internet, you're going to find a small audience for just about anything. And I think, I like doing games, but the fact of the matter is that I don't really, I'm just like any other, jerk on the internet with, who likes playing games, right? There's nothing to necessarily, there's nobody, There's nobody there's no differentiation, right? In this case, everybody likes playing games. There's I'm not necessarily doing anything special, but I do think that there is some value, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitch, and particularly too, like especially in those early times when you're streaming, when you don't necessarily have a guaranteed audience and you just have a chance to explore. Like sometimes it's still not a bad way to figure stuff out for yourself, just in terms of what your interests are. So you found a Hellenist who is playing Stardew Valley and studying Greek on air. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, but yeah, so that's that it's always worth. It's twofold, right? In one sense, for me as a broadcaster, it's nice to remind people that Twitch works because there's viewers. So, I think any broadcaster that you watch will always be grateful for the fact that not everybody is all streaming, because somebody has to watch these broadcasts at some point. But that doesn't mean that people who want to do a stream shouldn't do a stream, right? It's open to anyone. It doesn't take a lot. OBS is a free program. Most of us have computers that are. If you can play a game, you can probably do a broadcast. And so from there, it's just a question of deciding how you want to spend your leisure time. And particularly when people have an eccentric hobby or a specialization or any of these things, I think those are really great opportunities. So anyways, thank you everybody for hanging out. Sorry for the shorter and more rambly stream, but I did enjoy doing this, and I'm hoping some of you got something out of it as well. We'll maybe make a little more progress in the game next time, but I will. I'm actually surprised that I got through the potion, so that was good. All right, let me just see. Oh, damn it. I do want to host somebody, but... All right, this has been a little funny. Oh, actually, this gives me a chance to... Let's see who's online. For those of you that like old games, we've got Kilgore Trout playing Freelancer, so I will raid him tonight. I will also mention Kilgore Trout, fellow Canadian. I believe he's now based in the Atlantic provinces, and he will be he's a member of the GOG stream team. I'm assuming they still have it. I know they went independent recently, but he, in addition to doing his normal stream, has a fairly large movie collection, and so will occasionally, or not occasionally, but as a somewhat regular feature, he'll take us some select movies and some boxes that he owns for old games and just sort of do box and movie hype and sort of show what those things look like. So I'm going to leave you in his capable hands, and see you all possibly Friday. Thanks.